1:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here is the news edited by Danushka Madhavela and read by Indrani Senanayaka. The headlines. Former MP Hirunika Premachanda sentenced to 3 years rigorous imprisonment. The State Minister of Finance says that the successful completion of the bilateral debt restructuring was due to the trust built up internationally in Sri Lanka. It is stressed that the only leader able to develop the country economically is President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga says that he will support President Ranil Wickremesinghe in the upcoming presidential election. New electricity bill endorsed by Speaker. The last 2 batches of NVQ qualified and trained technical assistants of the CEB will be recruited as permanent members of the electricity sector. In foreign news, Biden and Trump trade bombs in testy debate. In sports news, India crush England to reach T20 World Cup final. Former Member of Parliament Hirunika Premachanda has been sentenced to 3 years rigorous imprisonment by the Colombo High Court. The former parliamentarian was sentenced after being found guilty of being involved in the abduction of a youth in the Dematogoda area in 2015. The sentencing was delivered by Colombo High Court Judge Amal Ranaraja this morning. Accordingly, Premachanda was found guilty of 18 charges, and the court ordered that a fine of 20,000 rupees be imposed for each charge. The order also stated that if the payment of the fines is defaulted, an additional 6 months' imprisonment will be imposed for each charge. When the case was taken up, Colombo High Court Judge Amal Ranaraja declared in open court that the defendant was found guilty of conspiracy and aiding and abetting the abduction of a youth. The State Minister of Finance, Shehan Sembasinghe, says that the successful completion of the bilateral debt restructuring was due to the trust built up internationally in Sri Lanka. The minister mentions that Sri Lanka will be able to move forward by following the standard methods of debt restructuring. Minister Sembasinghe expressed these views by participating in the negotiations related to debt restructuring. The minister said by this debt restructuring, the loan repayment period will be extended up to 2043 and the loan interest rate will also decrease. The minister noted that the first 2 steps of the 3 parts of domestic debt restructuring, bilateral debt restructuring and agreeing with private bondholders have been completed. Agreements with private bondholders are also moving forward. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says that the new electricity bill that was passed in Parliament 3 weeks ago was endorsed by the Speaker yesterday. Accordingly, the new act comes into effect from yesterday. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga says that he will support President Ranil Wickremesinghe in the upcoming presidential election. He added that President Ranil Wickremesinghe is the only person who is able to stabilize the country. He made these remarks while addressing a meeting held with political activists in the Udugampala area yesterday. He added that the leadership of a country should be given to a mature person who is capable of working for the good of the country and its people. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, and we continue with local news. Mahanayaka of the Kalyani Samagri Sangha Sabha, Councillor of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, the Most Venerable Ithipane Dhammalankara Thera, says that the only leader to govern the country with proper economic development is President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Thera made this comment when the President called on him yesterday. The President met the Thera at the Kottawa Rukmale Sri Dhamma Vaidyaloka Viharaya. The President informed the Thera regarding the present economic and financial development gained by the country at present. He also said that the country should be diverted on a new path to avoid falling into the same old set of problems faced by the country in the recent past. The President thanked the Most Venerable Itipane Dhammalanka Ratera for inviting him for taking over the country during a difficult period. Minister of Justice, Prison Affairs and Constitutional Reform, Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said that the newly proposed bill will enable the government to confiscate any property even without being proven beyond a reasonable doubt in court. The minister revealed that the government has decided to urgently enforce these laws and regulations to confiscate properties in Sri Lanka and overseas acquired through illegal channels. Sources close to the Justice Ministry revealed that the process of finalizing these laws has been delayed due to negotiations with the International Monetary Fund for the debt restructuring process to overcome the existing economic collapse. The last two batches of NVQ qualified and trained technical assistants of the CEB will be recruited as permanent members of the electricity sector. Over the last 6 years, 10 batches of youth had worked as temporary members of the CEB to complete their training and to achieve the NVQ qualifications required to be permanent technical officers. Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that he met the representatives of the batches to discuss the sector reforms, electricity sector requirements and other matters related to the electricity sector. That ends the local segment of news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Veda Mahatmya.
Transport, Highways and Mass Media Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, as Acting Education Minister, requested all teachers to report to work and dedicate themselves to educate our children without engaging in trade union action further. The minister also said that he would request the parents to send all their children to school as usual. The minister made these remarks while addressing a special press conference to raise awareness regarding the ongoing teachers and principals strike at the Government Information Department yesterday. He requested all teachers and principals to think of the future of the next generation and report to work from today for the sake of the entire student community.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Veda Mahatmya.
We now take a look at Watchlight. The Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre of the Met Department has issued warning for strong winds and rough seas. The warning was issued for naval and multi-day fishermen communities in the Arabian Sea. Very strong winds of 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. Very rough seas are likely over the Arabian Sea area due to the active southwest monsoonal condition, and that came to you in Watchlight. Coming up, World News. First, the headlines. Biden and Trump trade bombs in testy debate. Von der Leyen nominated to stay on in top EU job. Oklahoma orders schools to teach Bible immediately. U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump hit out at one another in a testy televised debate, the first of the 2024 election. The two rivals accuse one another of lying as they answer wide-ranging questions on issues including foreign policy, the economy and abortion. Trump repeatedly attacks Biden on the economy and his foreign policy record, while Biden takes aim at his rival's criminal conviction and alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election. The stakes are high as both men come face to face for the first time in almost 4 years to try and convince voters they should back them on the 5th of November. This is the second time Biden, a Democrat, and Trump, a Republican, will challenge each other for the White House after Trump lost in 2020. Georgia is a key battleground state and one which Biden won by fewer than 13,000 votes in 2020. EU leaders have nominated current European Commission head Ursula von der Leyen for a second 5-year term in the bloc's top job at a summit in Brussels. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas was picked as the EU's next foreign affairs chief, and former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa was chosen as the next chairman of EU summits. All three candidates are from centrist pro-EU factions. The European Parliament is due to vote on the nominations next month. Ursula von der Leyen is from Germany's centre-right, Antonio Costa is a socialist, and Kaja Kallas a liberal. There has been resistance from Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Before the summit, she said, the plans ignore the successors of hard-right parties like her own in the recent election for the European Parliament. Oklahoma's top education official has ordered schools in the state to begin incorporating the Bible into lessons in the latest UL cultural flashpoint over religious in classrooms. A directive sent by Republican State Superintendent Ryan Walters said the rule was compulsory, requiring immediate and strict compliance. The rule will apply to lessons for all public school students aged from around 11 to 18. It comes a week after Louisiana's governor signed a law directing all public schools in that state to display the Ten Commandments. In a statement on Thursday, Mr. Walters described the Bible as an indispensable historical and cultural touchstone. Mr. Walters, a former public school history teacher, was elected to his post in 2022 after campaigning on a platform for combating woke ideology and eliminating radical leftists from Oklahoma's education system. To end this bulletin of world news, the headlines again. Biden and Trump trade barbs in testy debate. Von der Leyen nominated to stay on in top EU job. Oklahoma orders schools to teach Bible immediately. And that ends this bulletin of world news.
Development news.
The International Monetary Fund stated yesterday that it has welcomed the announcement of Sri Lanka's finalization of the country's debt restructure agreements with its major creditors. IMF Senior Mission Chief in Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, said in a statement issued yesterday that the finalization of the debt agreements by Sri Lanka with the creditors reached with China and other creditor nations in order to restructure about $10 billion in bilateral debt is a key milestone which has taken the country one step closer towards completing its debt restructuring and restoring debt sustainability. Brewer stated that the IMF hopes that there will be swift progress on reaching agreements with external private creditors in the near future. Sri Lanka still needs to convince bondholders to restructure about $12.5 billion in international bonds.
Moving on with sports news.
England's defence of the T20 World Cup is over after they slumped to a 68-run thrashing by a superb India in the semi-final in Guyana. Set 172 on a difficult pitch to make Saturday's final, England's batters folded and were dismissed for 103 in 16.4 overs. Captain Josh Buttler gave them a solid start with 23, but his wicket was the first of 4 for 20 runs. Phil Salt fell for 5, Johnny Bastow a 3-ball duck, and Moeen Ali 8 for 10 balls. With the superb Kuldeep Yadav, who took 3 for 13, bowled Harry Brook for 25. London were 68 for 6 and the game done, although there was still time for 2 dismal run-outs. Butler's side were also guilty of allowing India to get to a score above par, although that was largely down to the excellence of Rohit Sharma and Suryakumar Yadav. They overcame a slow surface that also kept low in a fine partnership of 73 from 50 balls that took India to 171 for 7, Rohit hitting 57 and Suryakumar 47. India, who have not won a World Cup for 13 years, will play first-time finalist South Africa. A meeting of the tournament's 2 unbeaten sides in Barbados. England will fly home on Friday and are next in action in a 3-match test series against the West Indies starting on the 10th of July.
Go එකක් තියන youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
An electric car battery developed by UK startup Neobolt has successfully charged from 10% to 80% in 4 minutes and 37 seconds in its first live demonstration. It was achieved with a specially built concept sports car on a test track in Bedford and is part of industry-wide efforts to get electric vehicles, EVs, charging more quickly. By comparison, an existing Tesla supercharger can charge a car battery to 80% in 15 to 20 minutes. Experts say eliminating so-called range anxiety is key to increasing uptake of EVs, but also stress the importance of improving the charging infrastructure.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go එකක් තියන youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
The Indian government has sought a detailed report from Tamil Nadu state following media reports that Apple supplier Foxconn was allegedly rejecting married women for iPhone assembly jobs. A Reuters investigation alleged that Foxconn had excluded married women from jobs at its main India iPhone plant near Chennai, citing their greater family responsibilities compared to unmarried women. The Federal Labour Ministry says the law clearly stipulates that no discrimination is to be made while recruiting men and women workers. Foxconn said in a statement it vigorously refutes allegations of employment discrimination based on marital status. Neither Apple nor the Tamil Nadu state government responded to requests for comment from Reuters.
Weather report.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. Several spells of showers will occur in the western, Sabaragamuwa and northwestern provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura districts. Showers or thunder showers may occur at a few places in the Uva province and in the Ampara and Batticaloa districts in the evening or at night. Strong winds of about 40 to 50 kilometers per hour can be expected at times over the western slopes of the Central Hills, the northern, north-central and northwestern provinces and in the Trincomalee, Hambantota and Monaragala districts. To end this afternoon's news broadcast, we take a look at the headlines again. Former MP Hirunika Premachandra sentenced to 3 years rigorous imprisonment. The State Minister of Finance says that the successful completion of the bilateral debt restructuring was done due to the trust built up internationally in Sri Lanka. It is stressed that the only leader able to develop the country economically is President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga says that he will support President Ranil Wickremesinghe in the upcoming presidential election. New electricity bill endorsed by Speaker. The last 2 batches of NVQ qualified and trained technical assistants of the CEB will be recruited as permanent members of the electricity sector. In foreign news, Biden and Trump trade barbs in testy debate. In sports news, India crush England to reach T20 World Cup final. That ends this afternoon's news broadcast. 34 minutes past 1 o'clock. This is Radio Sri Lanka. And it's time for me to exit the studio, but of course you're in good company, that of Chandima Veerakon. Well, surprised to see you, Chandima, on a Friday afternoon, because generally the two of us work on a Saturday night. But anyway, I'm sure you're enjoying yourself tremendously, and the listeners out there also are having a good time. So for those of you who are sitting down to have your lunch, well, we provide music for you in the background, so sit down, enjoy the music. the wonderful company here behind the microphone, and of course your lunch and the rest of the afternoon and the rest of the evening until 10 o'clock at night. Wishing every one of you nothing but the very best indeed.